Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today, sitting down watching WWE Unreal Season 2 on Netflix. Today is January 20th. We had Season 2 get rolled out today. I didn't get a check to see how many episodes there were. I think last time there was 5 episodes they covered from the Monday Night Raw debut on Netflix until WrestleMania. This one honestly seems to pick up the night after WrestleMania on Monday Night Raw, and it seems like it is going to show the plans that roll into SummerSlam. Honestly, season 1, I thought it was pretty groundbreaking. I thought it was really, really good stuff. They didn't show as much of the writer's room as I really honestly thought they were going to. A lot of backstage stuff, a lot of at-home stuff. This season started with videos of Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch being at home. When they got married in Hawaii, they had when Becky Lynch came home with the baby, and it wasn't like it was family shot on an iPhone footage. It was like they really sent a WWE crew there. They weren't they weren't on Total Divas. They weren't on Total Bellas. I don't really know why this is a thing. I'm just surprised. It's almost like I know it's real, but it makes me think like it's a reshoot or something like that, just for something to be added to this show. How much stuff do they really film of their real lives, hoping that someday they're going to make a documentary, that they're going to make a DVD, that they're going to make a box set of somebody that they want to put this stuff out? That's weird. I don't know if Becky and Seth. I don't think it was put up like on YouTube back in the day when they got married. So I don't really know, but I understand Netflix wanted to make this show. It's Peyton Manning's team, the same people who do the quarterback show and the starting five NBA show. I don't know. That's honestly it's just weird, but I felt like 4 of the episodes were really, really good. I don't think they needed the WrestleMania episode because of the fact it's WrestleMania. It's the one show that everybody goes out of their way to watch each and every year. It's bigger than the Royal Rumble, even though everybody will say that the Royal Rumble is one of the best nights because it's 2 unpredictable matches that go down on the same night, and it's just one hell of a deal. So I'm looking forward to this, honestly, because the last episode will probably be about SummerSlam, and SummerSlam isn't as big. It's not as, like, you don't remember everything that happened like you do at WrestleMania. I'm hoping that things will roll together. In episode 1, we covered Seth Rollins. We covered Becky Lynch making her return to wrestling. We got a peek at Gunther. Not really behind the scenes at all, but we did get his feud with Pat McAfee. And we had the rollout of Lyra Valkyrie because of the fact Becky is coming back to basically get Lyra over. Is what it was. So this opened up with the understanding of Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch being in a relationship. Becky Lynch is referred to as a unicorn by Seth Rollins, that she is a one of none. He's very lucky that he found her. They have their family. They're the wrestling, family circus that is out there on the road. But Becky Lynch basically took off 2004 to come back in 2005. I remember when Becky Lynch's contract was coming up, they didn't really explain it that way. And she lost a cage match to Liv Morgan for the WWE Championship, and she just kind of walked away. And I think everybody knew she wasn't going to AEW, but how much time was she really going to take off? This is a woman that at one point was the biggest name in professional wrestling. She was bigger than John Cena. She was bigger than Roman Reigns. She definitely was bigger than, Charlotte or Ronda Rousey. She was the one person everybody wanted to see. The only woman in the history of WrestleMania to end the show with her hands raised that everybody came to see that night. And honestly, when people bought tickets to WrestleMania 35, I've made jokes about it in the past. I think everybody knew that Becky was going to win. And one of the best surprises that happened was when they were setting up the Survivor Series, the year they were building up Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch's nose got busted open by Nia Jax in that fight. I believe it was on Raw, where SmackDown invaded, and she broke her nose. She ran out of the arena. She was holding her hands up, ready to fight, as the nose was just pouring out blood. It was all over her hands. It was all over the people she was punching. She had no fears of Ronda Rousey. It was supposed to be Rousey versus Becky at Survivor Series, and they were just going to beat her, and that was going to be it. Because of the fact that she had to get surgery on her nose, she had to get better. They put Charlotte in that spot, and they made you wait. And the waiting is what built Becky up to be the man that we know today. It made her a bigger star by holding her out. I mean, if it wasn't for that, I don't think she would have been in the spot to main event WrestleMania. So it's crazy how things like that happen. Triple H explains what the night after WrestleMania is, explains what SummerSlam is, basically sets the table for what this season of Unreal is going to be. Is like, we saw the build up to WrestleMania, the biggest night that there is in wrestling, but there is no nights off when it comes to WWE, and they immediately turn the gas on and they start building the show until SummerSlam. I want to see season 3. I know that season 3 probably will be based a lot about John Cena, even though we only saw him for a moment backstage. I don't know if he's going to be continued on in this. He was a big part of season 1. I'm really hoping that he is. I don't know why he wouldn't be. But I want to see how they explain the night after SummerSlam. And do they build the Survivor Series? Do they start to build to the next, to the Royal Rumble, so they can get us to WrestleMania? What is the goal of the night after SummerSlam? Because I think all wrestling fans, as big or as small as they are, they know that around August, September, October, November, definitely December, wrestling goes into a little bit of a wrestling fatigue, and it just doesn't hit the same. And then come January, they just turn it up yet once again, and they start putting the gas on until WrestleMania. So Becky left. She had the baby in 2020. She took some time off. She came back. She wrestled in 2024. Her contract ended, and Triple H said, okay, we'll pause this, but when you're ready, let us know. 2025, she started wrestling with Seth, started getting herself back into shape, and it was ready to make the return. Lyra Valkyrie, she talked about basically getting into the wrestling business. Her first NXT match was seeing Becky Lynch come out as the last kicker. She was a fellow Irish wrestler that was in WWE, and that became her goal. She went out, she found somewhere to get trained to be wrestling, and then Becky Lynch came in as a guest trainer. That's when they first met, and Becky Lynch talks about how her WWE career is probably on her last contract. That's funny. That's the same thing that we've heard from Cody Rhodes. These guys, they seem to wrestle a lot less, and it makes you think that they're trying to save these guys and girls that they will preserve their careers and make them last longer. We got 24 years out of John Cena, minus the time that he was off doing, Hollywood movies where he was taking time off. Roman Reigns honestly seems like who knows how long it will last, but it definitely seems that Hollywood took him away and we haven't got him as many. But I mean, Randy, Brock Lesnar, these guys aren't going to be around forever. AJ Styles, who made his WCW debut somewhere around 2000 or 2001, his deal is going to be coming up. He's going to be ending. So I don't know if people will want the long careers, as the money is more, they have more when they walk away. But Becky talks about, a big part of her wanting to come back is building the future and putting people to be in a spot where wrestling is bigger when it's all said and done. She's going to come back at WrestleMania. The match was Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan going up against Lyra and Bayley. They did an injury angle. I don't remember. I'll tell you the truth. This was the one match everybody knew that Becky Lynch was going to return. There was a few names people were throwing out there. Maybe somebody like Lita or a legend would return and fill the spot because it's WrestleMania. But everybody was holding out for Becky Lynch, even though we hadn't heard the rumor that she'd signed or that she'd been training or she'd been around other than just being with Seth when he was doing shows. I don't know how Bayley got taken out, but the day of WrestleMania, she needed a partner, and Becky Lynch, Triple H said, even if fans know it's going to be her, and it's her, it's still a surprise. It's still going to be big. Basically, they go out there. Becky Lynch gets the huge pop. Everybody is so excited that she's back. They hope that she wins the match so they become champions, and her return would last longer because there's no Becky Lynch is back. She's full time. We're going to see her wrestle on Raw. We're going to see her wrestle on SmackDown. We don't really know. It's just WrestleMania and she's out there. They ended up winning the match. We come back the next night on the Raw after WrestleMania. We have a straight rematch, Raquel and Liv versus Lyra and Becky. And as the match is going on, basically, Lyra is in the ring, and Raquel Rodriguez gets bounced out of the ring, which takes out Becky into the announce table, and Liv ends up getting the win by pinning Lyra. Their title reign ends after 24 hours, and Becky gets into the ring, gives Lyra a hug, and then immediately beats her up. I still don't know if she's really caring about those tag titles. If you're watching WWE today, the women on the roster care more about the tag titles than they honestly do just about anything else. So maybe that's a thing. Or if she just always wanted to go after Lyra's Intercontinental Championship that she had won. This is going to be very weird, but we just immediately cut to Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee joining WWE, being brought in by Michael Cole the night after WrestleMania. We have Pat McAfee yeeting with Michael Cole. Gunther comes out, immediately goes after Michael Cole, thinking that they're rubbing it in his face that he lost at WrestleMania. And Pat McAfee jumps in, and the boys. It was a very awesome angle. Even with no commentary in the arena, it felt really hot. It was something that you knew that was big. And you immediately thought McAfee and Gunther are going to wrestle at Backlash, and this is going to be a big match because of the fact that Gunther is not the World Heavyweight Champion anymore. Pat McAfee brought in a ring into the Thunderdome, and that's where he does his show and where he's based in Indianapolis for ESPN. He was training almost every day. We flip over into the writing room, and we see Bruce Pritchard sitting there, and he goes, "Yeah, you know what? why are we doing something here at Backlash that is just going to be predictable? Where we have, a wrestler go up against, a celebrity, and the guy's going to get beat. He's basically throwing out there that he wanted Pat McAfee to win this match against Gunther. I don't know who the other guy was. He wasn't a former wrestler. He was just a guy on the writing team. There was only like 4 or 5 people in the room. And maybe they put the name on the screen and I didn't have a chance to see it. But the other guy's like, we just had Gunther come out and say on Raw that he was more focused than ever. He had a bad night. He lost to Jey Uso, but he's going to get, refocused. He's going to win his championship back, and he's just going to lose. But not only is he going to lose, he's going to lose to a commentator. Doesn't believe it. It wasn't meant to be. It wasn't in the cards. But we go to McAfee versus Gunther, WWE Backlash, St. Louis. It wasn't the main event because of Cena versus Randy Orton that night. But it was big. There was a lot of heat. There was a lot of people speculating about the match as we went into it. It was one of the hottest things that there was out there. It was a really big respect match because at the end of the night, Gunther choked out McAfee in the ring. But then when the match was over, we saw a different side of Gunther that we've never seen with anybody else in WWE. That he basically helped him up. He shook his hand. He sort of held his hand up for the people of St. Louis. And I kind of thought that we were seeing a softer side of Gunther, that he might turn to I don't want to go as far as say babyface, but, just a different side of him that we didn't get to see. Because since then, we've seen him go out and crush the career of Goldberg, crush the career of John Cena. He's going after AJ Styles at the Royal Rumble. So we go from there. We had the Pat McAfee versus Gunther thing was a good portion of the show, but it was only minutes. We jumped right over to going into the next match of the night, which was Lyra versus Becky at WWE Backlash. This was for the Intercontinental Championship. They didn't really put over. They didn't even show us how Lyra won the Intercontinental Championship, that she had to, win it in a tournament, the first championship. I just thought it was weird that they brought these championships in within the last year, and then when it comes to WrestleMania, they put it in a tag match rather than defending it. And then on top of that, Chelsea Green, who's the United States champion over on SmackDown, she didn't get a championship shot. I don't even think she defended her title on the SmackDown of WrestleMania. But at the end, Lyra gets jumped by Becky. Becky's beating her down. She's putting her in the arm hammer. I don't think this is when the title changed hands. I think it was just a match where Becky beat her up. I don't really have fond memories of this match, and they didn't show Becky walking out with the title at the end of it. So we're just going to end it with that. Really good episode. Looking forward to just rolling on episode 2, 3, 4. I think the last time we did this, I watched 3 episodes in one night. I came back the next day and I watched the last 2. My plan is to watch as many as I can. So we'll continue on. Episode 2 coming next. Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here back again with episode 2 of WWE Real from Netflix. This was honestly entitled The Truth, and it was probably 90% about R-Truth and his release from WWE and his return at the WWE's Money in the Bank. They did a really good job stitching in the Naomi storyline, talking about her heel turn by bringing up the fact of at one point in Naomi's career, she had to walk out of WWE when, she felt that her and Sasha Banks were not being written for correctly. It wasn't really a money issue like the R-Truth situation was explained to us. But In the last episode, we touched on Gunther versus Pat McAfee because there's really nowhere else to really put that into there. But this was a really good episode for anybody. This is probably going to be a sit alone episode that I can see somebody firing up on Netflix 5 years down the road. When thinking about the one time that we got told R-Truth was released, and the whole talk of the town was this a storyline? Was it real? Was he going to AEW? Was he going back to TNA? I can see this as an episode of WWE Unreal that will live on. A lot of the other ones, maybe you go back and watch WrestleMania 41 all over again if you're a big fan of WrestleMania 41, if that was your first Mania, maybe to relive some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. But as of right now, I think this episode right here is the best standalone episode that they've done. They open up the episode talking about the friendship between R-Truth and Road Dogg. They almost made it seem like Road Dogg found R-Truth while he was wrestling in Memphis. He was trying to do a lot with his life. He was really trying to get into the music business, whether if it was rapping, whether it was producing, whether if it was singing. And somehow he ended up in a wrestling ring because he knew that he could make money at it. He said, I'm going to give myself about 4 or 5 months. And, 4 or 5 months came and he wasn't there and he was getting ready to quit. When all of a sudden Road Dogg, it wasn't really said why he was making an appearance there. I don't know if they were wrestling for, Jerry Lawler, and because of the Jerry Lawler WWF deal, maybe Road Dogg went there to help out, and that's when Road Dogg saw Truth, and he knew that there was a future for this guy, and he said, you give me 2 months, I'll get you back on TV. And this 2 months got R-Truth into WWE. They started tag teaming. They made it seem like Truth's career in WWE started at that point. I honestly think that they could have talked about this for about 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and they could have gave us a better backstory. R-Truth came in with Road Dogg, and they were a tag team. They weren't the best tag team. They were a tag team. They were on TV. They were on Raw. They were on SmackDown. They were entertaining because Road Dogg was somebody that was a fan favorite. But, Road Dogg talks about it, his path with addiction, and he doesn't sort of regret any of this because he made a lot of friendships, like with Triple H and, R-Truth, through those. Not like they were doing it with him, but like that's where he was in his life. And, where was I going? They could have talked about the fact that because of that, R-Truth got released because they released the Road Dogg because they were, kind of tired of what was going on in his lifestyle, and they didn't need it in WWF anymore. They ended up going and finding their spot in TNA. He wrestled for TNA for a good long while before coming back to WWE, but I mean, probably from off the top of my head, 02 to 09, maybe even 010. R-Truth wasn't a WWE superstar. He was a TNA superstar. And, they did 3 Live Crew. They did Ron Killings. I think Ron won the NWA title at one point, being a champion for them. At one point, he was kind of the biggest star they had there other than Jeff Jarrett. And they were trying to build him up. So we see the friendship between R-Truth and Road Dogg. R-Truth talks about the fact that he has a connection with John Cena. That when Cena kind of left WWE and he wasn't around anymore, R-Truth, put on the attire, and we saw a different side of comedic, R-Truth, where he would go out there and he would do John Cena's moves and have a connection with the family. But on the build-up to Backlash, at the end of it, R-Truth came up and he was talking to John Cena during his press conference in the back, and John Cena took offense to R-Truth, saying that, none of the fans liked him, didn't think that he could wrestle anymore. And he picked up R-Truth and he laid him out with an AA. One of the worst backstage segments, maybe even one of the worst segments of all time, where, Cena was operating like he was the Terminator. He really didn't, show any emotion, didn't do anything out there, just put him through the table and just walked away. There was nothing there, but they were building up to the next Saturday night's main event. We see an actual, booking meeting in the back, and Road Dogg just speaks up, and I think he's talking for the heart, because of how him and Truth are friends, in and out of this business. And he doesn't want his friend to just have a bad, boring match that nobody really cares about. And he says the build-up to this match is really the shits. And he just wants to get it over with. He wants to get Truth pinned in the middle of the ring so they can just move on and go into the next direction. And maybe this is the one point, looking at it now, that when Ron Killings did everything that he did, maybe this is the fact why a week later it didn't really matter after he shaved his head, and we all thought Killings was going to be this brand new start for him, but it just led to a SmackDown match where Cena beat him again in a matter of minutes, and then we never really saw anything, coming out of it after that. But Truth versus Cena, Saturday night's main event. Truth came out. He basically said he was going to beat the hustle, loyalty, respect back into Cena. They did a spot during the match where basically it looked like Cena regretted his heel decision because of R-Truth, and it looked like he was going to take him out with the title, but then he ended up giving the title back to the referee, and we were kind of like, are we getting our John Cena back? Did Truth do it? And, when the referee took the title, Cena just kicked him in the nuts, and that was it. 1, 2, 3. It was all over with. But days later, R-Truth was released by WWE. R-Truth put the tweet out, basically announcing it himself, saying that he was going to be with the company. Rhea spoke up for the locker room, basically saying that she couldn't believe it. And then the flood of tweets from everybody on the roster, basically saying how much Truth meant to everybody, and how he was a team player and he was a team guy. But Triple H talked about the contract talks, and what it was basically WWE was willing to offer this much. Truth thought he was worth this much, and there was no middle ground. It was just they couldn't make up ground, and Triple H just said, "Hey, I'm gonna cut our talks just to see if maybe you'll come to us and want to negotiate." And instead of coming and saying that he wanted to be with WWE and he was willing to take less, he just went to his Twitter machine and just fired off the tweet, and it was too late. It was just all said and done. How they got Truth not to make a wrestling appearance for AEW or for TNA, I don't know. Maybe it was just the fact that the contract wasn't really expired. It was just expiring, and they hadn't really just done the release. They were just going to have a walk away. We see this a lot with contracts in wrestling, but they flashed that over to starting to talk about Naomi, where she left the company at one point because she had a misunderstanding. We see her at home with Jimmy Uso. She talks about her debut as a Funkadactyl, and how WWE women's wrestlers didn't really get a lot of time with matches or backstage promos or anything like that. And that sort of morphed into her getting a little bit more responsibility in the company when she won the women's tag title on SmackDown in 2017. But in 2022, when she was the tag champ, her and Sasha Banks, they walked out of the company. Mainly, I I never really knew the story. I just knew that it happened and it was a big deal at the time. But 2022, I wasn't 100% into the wrestling business. I wasn't listening to podcasts or interviews. I was kind of watching sporadic shows and, kind of just reading the headlines. So I knew that the Sasha and Naomi thing happened, but never really knew. I thought it was just they thought they were the tag champs and they should be higher on the card, that they were taken more seriously. They made it seem that they got put into like a 6-pack challenge where they were going to have to fight each other, even though they were tag champs, and they didn't want to have to be turned on each other. So maybe they just wanted one person to be in the match and not the other person. This happens all of the time. They could have just booked the match where they didn't turn on each other, and they could have had an advantage where it was basically 2 on everybody else, and who else in there was going to be a team to go at it. And in the end, they weren't going to win the match anyways. So I don't know, but it was funny to hear them dance around, not saying Vince McMahon, not saying John Laurinaitis, but they would say Sasha Banks. But they never really referred to, her leaving and going to TNA. They just talk about this 2-year gap in her career before returning to the Royal Rumble in 2024. Didn't say TNA, didn't say Impact, Knockout Champion, nothing like that. She just walks out in the Rumble and they say she's back. Didn't really talk about how she probably had her best run as a wrestler in 2023, just wrestling the other women like Jordynne Grace over in TNA. They get to the point where Naomi is having the best year in the wrestling career that she's ever had, where she turns heel by attacking Jade Cargill. She even talks about the backstage skit with Jade being pushed off the platform on top of the car, going through the glass. And the fact was that they were a tag team, Bianca and Naomi, and she was feeling threatened because Jade Cargill had come into the company and joined the group, and Jade and Bianca were coming close friends, and she felt like she was being squeezed out. That led to them going to the Money in the Bank 2025 women's match. They jump around on Money in the Bank a lot. Naomi ends up winning the match. They show a lot of the headlines, or a lot of highlights from the match without really showing it. But Naomi, walks out with the Money in the Bank, and we're left with her just basically saying everybody's being put on notice that she has it. R-Truth makes his return at Money in the Bank in the tag match between Cody and Jey Uso against John Cena and Logan Paul. Lots of "We Want Truth" chants out there. I don't really remember if there was a rumor that he was going to be there or if it was really a surprise, but the fans were out basically wanting him. It reminded me a lot of like when Edge was on back in 2004, 2005. When was like "We Want Matt Hardy" stuff with Edge and Lita and Matt Hardy back in the day. But basically, when Logan flipped out and took a Jey Uso through the announce table and the announcers went to go check on them, R-Truth slid into the ring, tackled John Cena, punched him a couple of times, and then ran off. That led to Cody Rhodes getting up, hitting the crossroads on John Cena, pinning him 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring, and ending the Money in the Bank show with everybody kind of like, Truth's back, but is he really back? Was that a fan? Was he think there is a fan? Was he like, is it a wrestling thing or is it a real life thing? Road Dogg, that my favorite thing of the whole episode, honestly, was the point when Road Dogg said that he experienced this as a fan. He didn't really know. Nobody smartened him up. It was the fact of Triple H, Nick Khan, signing the deal with R-Truth, and then who would know, who wouldn't know. They tell Cody, Triple H even talks about the fact that he forgot, didn't get a chance to tell Logan, didn't get a chance to tell Jey Uso, what announcers knew, what referee knew. Road Dogg didn't know. But I thought it was really cool that he said he experienced this as a fan, because that's the one reason all of us watch this show, and it's probably one of the reasons 90% of those guys get into the wrestling business, because of the fact that they are fans and they want to do that. They leave us with R-Truth talking about the next night on Monday Night Raw. He shaves his head. And they even talked about it during the booking committee when Road Dogg was saying no way, he doesn't want this to happen. But Truth leaves us just basically saying the only reason why he shaved his head was to show the new Ron Killings and the fact that he was going bald. And he laughed. He laughed. This was a good episode, really good episode. Ranked this a 5 out of 5, and probably the one episode of all of these episodes that they've done so far that has rewatchability down the road. R-Truth, Ron Killings, future Hall of Famer. Peace out. All right. What is up, everybody? We are back with episode 3 of season 2 of WWE Unreal, entitled The Vision, which for the most part was part 1 of Seth Rollins' career arc in between WrestleMania 41, leading us into SummerSlam, which I think is going to either be a big part of episode 4 or episode 5. Basically, WrestleMania 41 was the story of Roman Reigns, CM Punk, and Seth Rollins main eventing night 1 of WrestleMania 41. The build-up was that basically everybody hated everybody. There was no way to have a singles match, to basically get all of the aggressions out, since returning to WWE at the Survivor Series. CM Punk and Seth Rollins had not been able to get along. Roman Reigns and CM Punk had problems dealing with the friendship of who was the real Paul Heyman guy. And Roman and Rollins is a story as long as time, going back to their brotherhood of being in the Shield, and Seth Rollins hitting Roman Reigns with the chair. Then also at WrestleMania 40, the year before, Rollins and Roman, who hadn't been together, Rollins took the steel chair from Roman, which set up Cody to hit Roman with the crossroads and finally get over the hump of winning the championship that he wasn't able to do at WrestleMania 39. But Triple H basically says the story of WrestleMania 41 was Rollins accepting Paul Heyman after hating everyone that he had ever represented, understanding that if it meant him main eventing the next 5 WrestleManias, he would take Paul Heyman. And Paul, who didn't believe in Punk being able to be the long-term plan, and also Roman not being around as much, him thinking that Rollins was his meal ticket to big paydays at future main events of PLEs as well as WrestleManias, that was the right way for Paul Heyman to go. We also see that this is going to have a turn of, talking about Penta, who came into WWE shortly after the Netflix debut, talking about, his debut with his match against Chad Gable, explaining what the whole Mero means with the no fear, the whole deal. We learn about Penta, we talk about him, but he's kind of like just the filler of the episode. From talking about Penta, we bring up Penta versus Chelsea Green. They show a minute of their match in Lucha Underground, which Chelsea says is consistently always being brought up to her of when she is going to have a rematch against Penta. I don't know how WWE was able to get the Lucha Underground footage. I don't know who owns that. I don't know who has the rights to it. But then again, Guns N' Roses plays later on in the episode, and that costs some money. So maybe just WWE went out and just acquired the rights to Lucha Underground. They only showed footage of Chelsea hitting moves on Penta, so we see a guy versus girl, which is, kind of, not done in WWE, but at least they only show women on men's violence, so it's not going to cross the line for anybody to get too upset about. But we see Chelsea building her home and talking about her reliving her goals and being able to show her parents that, she's going to make it. She's not going to be all right. We go to them actually building the house that, if you listen to the Major Wrestling Figure podcast, you hear that they're actually moving into as of right now. Matt's got his toy room building, but for the second season in a row, Matt Cardona is nowhere to be seen. Now, we know as of now, Chelsea Green looks like she is a figure that they want to be on this show. Season 3, does Cardona come into play, and we actually get to see them living their life? We've heard her talk about her husband for 2 seasons now, but never being able to refer to who he is, even though in the last episode we talked about Sasha Banks. Why can't we talk about Zack Ryder? Why can't we talk about Matt Cardona? Could have talked a lot in the last season about what Chelsea did when she wasn't working for WWE. But then again, in the last episode with Naomi, they didn't even want to talk about TNA, who they have a working relationship with as of right now. But we talk about Chelsea's kind of way of looking at wrestling is it's not real. It's made up. We've seen Chelsea act in a few movies. So she kind of relates to that deal. And we talk about her being the United States title champion, but she learns only a few hours before the show that she is going to lose the U.S. title, which she talks about, she cares about, but at the same time, she understands that it's not real, so she has to put on that brave face and just say, great, it is what it is. And they build up to the Saturday night's main event rematch of Chelsea going up against Zelina Vega. And they talk about in the booking room that, Chelsea should win the title back because she is somebody special. She makes the most out of every opportunity when she's on the show. And Triple H kind of just shuts it down of being like, if Zelina loses, who does Chelsea work with? There's only kind of 3 to 4 women, Mia Yim and, what's that? B-Rap. No, B-Fab? I apologize. I don't even really know who I'm talking about as of right now. But, there's only like the 4 women in this division that fight over it. If Chelsea was to fight Charlotte, if she was to fight Tiffany, if she was to fight Jade, the other women that are on SmackDown, even Alexa Bliss, she's going to take the L. I mean, that's just where her pecking order is of the women's division. So what's the point of putting the championship back on her only for her to rule the roost and, sort of chop Zelina Vega down? Chelsea comes into the Saturday night's main event rematch. She's very sick. She's been sick for 8 days. She's gone to the doctor and tried to get better. They say it's allergies. She's doing everything she can just to get through the match, but she has fever, she has chills, she has all of the sickness basically. They're going through to see if she has like enough respiratory breath to make it through the match. She's hitting her inhaler. She's doing all of this. She goes out there. She has an all right match. It wasn't really that big of a match. My video talking about the match probably lasted longer than the match did. And then once they get back to the back, Zelina looks at Chelsea and she realizes that Chelsea is bleeding, and Chelsea tells her that she's broken her nose. What she goes on to tell us is that it's the 5th to the 7th time that she's broken her nose. And the doctors even warned her that the next time this happens, you're going to have to come in for surgery. This isn't just basically sitting out for a month. It's going to be a big deal that we have to go in and we have to fix. That is the end of the Chelsea storyline. We'll have to see if she pops up in another video. But we see Braun Breaker getting ready for his WrestleMania match, and he's in Gorilla when Triple H approaches him, and he says, "Hey, has anybody talked to you about tomorrow?" Basically they tell him that he's going to take out Roman Reigns, so he needs to go out there and he needs to have a match that deserves to put him in a situation where he's the one, basically sending Roman home. I thought the storyline coming out of the Raw after WrestleMania was going to be Roman and Punk having to work together to take down the Vision. I thought that's what the storyline was going to be leading into SummerSlam. And instead, Roman just took his ball, went home, and Sami Zayn moved into being CM Punk's best friend. And that's where the Vision storyline went to. The Vision was Paul Heyman, Seth Rollins, and Braun Breaker coming together. Once they finally got put into a match at Saturday night's main event against Sami and Punk, that's when Bronson Reed came. That had a little bit of a weirdness to it because the last time we saw Bronson Reed, he was taking out Seth Rollins. So why would Rollins and Reed become friends together? But that comes into the whole Paul Heyman thing of promising that where he fits into this Vision, and it's going to be Seth's time, then it's going to be Braun's time, which will roll into Bronson Reed's time. So now I'm at the point of wondering, so when is it Logan's time, and when is it going to be Austin Theory's time? There's only really two real belts in WWE. There's the WWE Championship, the World Heavyweight Championship. They're only focusing on one show at this point. When are they going to focus on brand domination of going over all of WWE, trying to take over all of the titles? I understand they're only on one show, but as of these days, everybody's on every show. They've been on SmackDown. Why aren't they on SmackDown more often going after this? It's going to be the downfall of the Vision in the future. Penta shows his wrestling school where he's trying to teach the Lucha Libre starts tomorrow, which ties us back into getting ready for the Money in the Bank men's match, where they show us the highlights, and they go out and they get Guns N' Roses to play Welcome to the Jungle's theme over it, which basically, that ain't cheap. So, Netflix, WWE Unreal, as well as Peyton Manning, sparing no expense for the Money in the Bank highlights. The match doesn't go off perfectly. We get a little bit of a replay from last year with Abyss being the producer of the match, and things not really going off perfect. Nobody liked the end. There wasn't enough suspense. Triple H is yelling at the monitor that this isn't what they had planned. This is not what they had talked about. Rollins came to the back. Basically, he was mad at himself. Abyss was apologizing to Bruce Pritchard, as well as apologizing to Triple H. Triple H blew it off again for the second year in a row of just being like, it's not your problem. Like, you told them what to do, and they went out there, and they didn't do it. If you would have gone out there in your tights, it wouldn't have looked as pretty. So it is what it is. Just get over it. At the end of the night, the match was set up to make LA Knight. And when Triple H is telling that to him, you can see it on his face that, you're right, I messed it up. For the people that are out there that believe that LA Knight should have been champion by this point, think of this moment. Think of that face with him being explained. The reason why him and Seth were supposed to have that moment fighting over the Money in the Bank briefcase, rather than Seth just walking up there and grabbing it on his own, was the fact that LA Knight was supposed to become the star. People think he's going to come back and he's going to win the Royal Rumble, that he's a guy that's worthy of that. I don't think it's going to happen. We learned a lesson of what the Money in the Bank briefcase is, with them showing Seth Rollins cashing in at WrestleMania 31, Damian Priest cashing in at WrestleMania 40, and guys making their career. And we get brought to Saudi Arabia, Punk versus John Cena at Night of Champions 2025. The match is going on. The ref gets bumped out, and we hear "Burn It Down." And we see the Vision, Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker, Paul Heyman, as well as Seth Rollins make their way down to the ring, cause havoc, taking everybody out, led by Charles Robinson, running down to the ring, much like it's WrestleMania 19, reliving the best spot of his career, only to be taken out by John Cena, because he doesn't want the match to go down like this. He doesn't want his championship. He knows that they're beating up CM Punk right now, but their plan is to go after the championship. Their plan is to go after Cena. I think that's the one thing that when people think about the Night of Champions match of Punk versus Cena being broken up by Rollins, in the end, Rollins took out Punk so Cena could win. But the reason why the Vision came down there was they wanted to take everybody out, and then they were going to go after Cena. Basically, Rollins only went after Punk because that was all he could do at the time. So Cena won the match, got the 1, 2, 3, thanks to the Vision, hightailed it out of there, still the champion. But we're brought to the To Be Continued, showing us where we are going to, of basically Rollins versus LA Knight at Saturday night's main event, which is going to be the main storyline that gets us to Rollins being injured and getting us to SummerSlam. So, season 2, episode 3 in the books. It's a good one, mostly about Seth Rollins and the Vision. And we learn a little bit about Chelsea, and we get to meet Penta for the first time. So, episode 3, we're burning on. Let's get to episode 4. Let's see if we're going to get to the screwy story of Rollins' non-injury at SummerSlam. Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. I've made it to episode 4 of WWE Unreal. And honestly, this is nobody's fault but my own. This was an alright episode. But honestly, with just the way that it ended, I only got 1 page of notes really to go off of. That's because of the fact that the ending, a good portion of this show, was spent talking about Evolution 2025. It was a show that honestly I didn't really care for. I knew that I wasn't going to be home for, and I didn't really watch. I didn't do any preparation. I don't think I really even did any videos talking about the thing was going to come up. So honestly, the highlights I kind of enjoyed. Of the 2-3 matches that they showed, Rhea versus Io, Bayley versus Lyra versus Becky, and Naomi versus Jade, because I only really knew about the Naomi cash-in, but it just really didn't hook me. It kind of was like the blow-off episode 5 of season 1 when it just covered WrestleMania 41. I was there, I saw the show, I pretty much remembered the show. It's a WrestleMania. Everybody kind of knows everything that happened, and nothing really happened backstage that made it special. It was just kind of the ending of all of the storylines, and just being like, man, I wish there was more episodes of Unreal. Now that we got them, the first few were really, really good. But this episode, performance art, it was a little bit of a tease leading us into episode 5. It was almost like this was kind of, to me, a not really needed episode other than the storyline involving Jelly Roll coming to work for WWE. But we get the story of what is a work, and they go to Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman, this is the one soundbite that we've heard leading up to this, is basically say like, hey, just so you know, I'm not a fan of the show. And he talks about, how when he was coming up, you did everything you could to defend the world of wrestling, and you basically had to fight everybody off if anybody caught on that this was an act, that this was a show, and now we're just giving it away, that all of this is predetermined, and basically everybody out here is doing whatever they're told to do. he just wasn't a very big fan. But for you ECW heads out there, Paul Heyman gave a little tip, and we got a little throwback footage of ECW with him telling the storyline of Sandman and Tommy Dreamer when they had a match, and Sandman was burned by a cigarette and then smacked in the eye with a kendo stick, and they led people to believe that Sandman was blind. And to sell this, basically the people who knew where, Sandman lived didn't want to see him, going down and pumping his gas or, buying milk at the convenience store or anything like that. The Sandman sold this storyline by staying home for 5 weeks, never leaving the house. Anytime that you ever saw him on TV, he was all bandaged up. And then they bring him to the arena for his retirement ceremony, retirement announcement. And what do you know? Sandman tricked Tommy Dreamer into just basically getting mollywopped. I guess is the best way to say it. But anytime you get to see old throwback ECW footage, especially now that it does not live on Peacock, does not live on ESPN, does not live on Netflix, I'll take it. Really, really good stuff. Jelly Roll comes to WWE now that he is a performer big enough, has enough celebrity status that he can work with them. In the past, he showed up to Monday Night Raw where he got to shove Dominic Mysterio during a match with Randy Orton. Then at WrestleMania 39, he got into the ring and, basically he performed a move with Miz and R-Truth, and then to save time, they helped him up. And he says at that point, that is a point he realized that it took two full-grown adults that were athletes to pick him up. That was the first time he ever realized how big he was and how big he got. And he put in work, and he put on work on top of work, where he was basically doing everything he could to basically push himself. And he got himself to 300 pounds, and he started going to the Performance Center and putting in work with Albert as well as Shawn Michaels, and as Triple H put it, turned himself into a very, a very sloppy Dusty Rhodes. But basically, a lot of the stuff that he was doing inside of the ring, it reminded him of Dusty back in the day. And so we're leading ourselves up to SummerSlam when Jelly Roll and Randy Orton would team up against Logan Paul and Drew McIntyre. So that's basically where we're leaving off is with his training and him getting ready. He was at the Saturday night's main event where he got into a fisticuffs with Drew as well as Logan Paul. Triple H was basically figuring out who he needed to tell what the act was going to be at the Saturday night's main event match with Seth Rollins and LA Knight. There was a big debate whether if LA Knight needed to know. Seth Rollins didn't want to tell LA Knight, but Triple H felt that he needed to tell him for the fact that if the tables were turned and they were doing an injury angle with LA Knight, would Seth want to know? And Triple H was basically saying, like, how bad would you feel if you thought you were in the ring with somebody and they got injured and they were going to be taken out for a good length of time, only for them just to show up and be like, poof, never happened. How much guilt would you feel over the 3 weeks to SummerSlam? And then really what resentment would you hold over that feeling for the next amount of time? At Saturday night's main event, the Rollins vs. LA Knight match went down. Everything went off to plan. Everything basically fell through perfect. The people who needed to know knew. The people who didn't need to know acted exactly the way that WWE wanted them to act. One of my favorite moments was the fact when the camera was in the back trying to get emotions and trying to get footage of Rollins making his way through the back was Jamie Noble's, just get those damn cameras off, man. I think that was my favorite spot of the entire show for the first 2 seasons was just seeing somebody like Jamie Noble reacting like this was a real situation. Like he was the one who sold it for me that maybe not everybody knew what was going on. We get greeted by Io Sky training at the gym. And she might have even been training at her house, the way that the room looked. But it was just an empty room. She was training, doing handstands for extended periods of time. She went over her names that everybody has done on the show. All I know is that when I bought her rookie card to add to my collection, my box of wrestlers, to make sure that I have everybody on the roster's rookie cards, her cards say Io Shirai. And they basically explained that they changed it to Io Sky because of the fact that she's not scared to jump off of just about anything. But as a wrestling fan, somebody like who watched NXT, who watches WWE, did they make the name change when she got promoted to the main roster? Or just one day did she walk out and her name just wasn't the same? I honestly don't know. And that's the reason why I'm asking. They showed a clip of her in NXT jumping off of the Mind Games set, the big skull that was in the back. And, they called her Io Shirai there. So I know that, she had it for a good while there. They showed clips of Evolution 2025, talking about the fact that they just got a chance to do it. They didn't talk about the fact that they scheduled this show to run against AEW, so they wouldn't have a really killer night for their biggest show of the year. They just happened to have a Saturday night's main event. They happened to have an all-women's pay-per-view, and they made it seem like it was a big deal when they ran one of these in 2018, and in 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24... They just didn't need to have one, but they just didn't have a weekend. They couldn't get a time on Peacock. I don't really understand how all of a sudden these Evolution shows are so important, and they're much needed to go down. But we had a 3-way of Bayley versus Lyra versus Bayley for the Intercontinental Championship. This was a big match because of the fact that Becky attacked Bayley, took her out to replace her as Lyra's partner to get close to Lyra, to lose the championship that they won the night before, attack Lyra, and start a feud against Lyra herself. And Bayley is just making her way back. And now here we are, like, I don't know how long we are, 6 months later? And Bayley and Lyra are just friends, tag team partners. Again, they got together because of the fact that Bayley was a little crazy and Lyra was scared that she was going to beat her up. And maybe we saw a little bit of that in the back when, Bayley was kind of like talking to herself and Lyra walked up on her like, I caught you. And I don't even know if Bayley is crazy anymore. It just is what it is. Main event ended up being Rhea versus Io. Naomi, who had lost a match to Jade earlier in the night, is a no-holds-barred match. She ended up cashing in her Money in the Bank to reclaim her top spot of the women's roster. She had never been WWE World Heavyweight Champion before. This is her first time with that belt. She won the other belt when it was connected to SmackDown in 2017. But we all know what's coming in the next episode. I'm pretty sure she's got to make her announcement of that she's pregnant. But we'll have to see. We got one more episode coming up, episode 5. And that's going to be the All She Wrote. Peace out, everybody. Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today with WWE Unreal, episode 5. I was able to watch it all in one night. I forgot what the heck. Episode 5 is called The Pop. That's what it was called. I don't know. I thought this was honestly a really good show. I don't want to do a full-on review because I plan on doing that tomorrow. But honestly, good stuff. I got a little bit of a fatigue. I said the performance art wasn't my favorite. episode because of the fact that they covered Evolution, and Evolution was just the show that I really didn't care about that much. This was about SummerSlam. I remember watching SummerSlam. It was a 2-night ordeal. We went over, two of the biggest nights of WWE's calendar year, and they're really memorable moments. But even though we knew what was coming, the amount of behind the scenes reactions that we got, honestly, I thought that's what we're here for. I mean, we all know what this show is going to be. SummerSlam was back in August. We are here in January, so we're 6 months down the calendar road. And if you follow WWE, you can remember what happened six months ago. You try to tell me something that happened like 3 years ago, it's gonna get kind of like mushed up in my brain, and maybe I'm not gonna remember exactly everything that happened in the order that it went down. But we start off this by just trying to hype up everything that is SummerSlam, and they're talking about Jelly Roll coming in for his big tag match, and they figure out that Jelly Roll is going to be guest hosting the Jimmy Kimmel show, and he can kind of do whatever he wants to while he's on the show. So they end up bringing in Logan Paul to run an angle where Logan Paul comes in to interrupt Jelly Roll. He ends up slapping Jelly Roll across the face, and Jelly Roll picks up Logan Paul, delivers the choke slam like he's the Big Show, putting him right through the Jimmy Kimmel announce desk. It was a pretty good segment. I made the rounds on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, that anybody out there who is mildly a fan of Jelly Roll would know that he's wrestling at SummerSlam, and that if you wanted at that time to watch the show, you had to subscribe to Peacock and then know what day his match was going to be on. And he was a celebrity that added to the show, that made it worthwhile. I mean, if you think about what made WrestleMania, it was the fact that it was a wrestling show, yes, but they had Muhammad Ali, they had Billy Martin, Liberace, the Rockettes, Cyndi Lauper. It was a little bit for everything and everybody, to bring in every fan in the world to be like, what is this wrestling? And get an idea of what's going down. We fast forward to the day of the show, and it didn't really fit in because we don't really get a lot of Gunther out of character. But Gunther comes up to Triple H, and I guess he had been clued in on what was going to be going down after the Gunther versus CM Punk match with Seth Rollins. And he said he was standing in Gorilla at the moment the Seth Rollins injury happened, and he went to Triple H, and he said that he felt really bad, and he was trying to get an update on Seth, and he said that Triple H really was like cold-blooded, just like, it is what it is, that this stuff happens. And Gunther said it shook him up a little bit, and he said he was cool with it. Now that he knows what's going to happen, he knows it's going to be a good moment. And but I just thought it was funny that Triple H tried to let everybody know who need to know when they need to know. And here's Gunther just flat out saying that like he was in Gorilla when it happened, and no one needed to smarten him up, that he just wasn't on the need to know yet. Jelly Roll and Randy Orton versus Logan and Drew. We see the highlights. I still tip my hat to Jelly Roll for taking the big spot with Logan Paul coming off the top rope and putting Jelly Roll through the table. Any other celebrity in the world would just get into the ring, throw some kicks, throw some punches, maybe take a bump into the ring. But for a guy to come flying off the top rope and put you through an announce table, that takes one hell of a fan to trust Logan Paul that much, especially with Shane Helms, the way that he reacted, like I knew he was gonna do it. That means that that people in the back were saying that this was a risk, that Logan wouldn't be able to hit the spot. So I thought that was fun. Jelly Roll wanted to lose. He didn't want to win. He really did a really good job of when he was getting, escorted away from ringside, leaving Randy Orton to fight off Logan and Drew in the ring. And then he got to a point when he wanted to get back in there, and he turned around. He went back to the ring, and that got the big pop that got everybody going, that I'm sure made everybody believe, like, oh, shoot, he's going to get back in there, and they're going to win. And then they lost. But I just love the fact that Jelly Roll personally asked Triple H if they could lose the match, because he liked the story that he was physically not able to keep up with these other guys inside of the ring. From there we go to Paul Heyman, calling Seth Rollins, asking where he is, going to meet him onto his bus, basically picking him up, putting him onto the cart, and bringing him up to Gorilla while the Punk versus Gunther match is going to be going on. The only thing I think that would have made it better was, Seth had the brace, but he was on the back of the cart, and he was being brought into the arena from the parking lot. The only thing that would have made it better is if people would have responded. I understand that the people backstage are probably backstage a lot, but there had to be some normal people that just happen to be back there, even if they're like celebrities. Celebrities are still wrestling fans, and if you see Seth Rollins coming up on the back of a cart during the main event with Paul Heyman, you got to be wondering, like, that's one heck of a coincidence that they're both riding up together, and like somebody's smart to the point of like, I heard about this. I listened to Post Wrestling. I heard him hinting at this, that this is a work, and it is. I got it. I mean, I'm not looking for, the Paul London situation of smiling at Vince McMahon as he's about to go, blow up in his limo. But that would have been cool. We had CM Punk hit Gunther with 2 GTSs after he was kind of like gloating to the crowd, and he got taken out by Punk, and he had the big bloody nose. They were setting up the situation that Gunther was going to be leaving. Of course, the story came out that he was having some sort of like nasal surgery. That's the reason why he took time off after SummerSlam. But, after the 2 GTSs, Punk pinned him. He got the win. They announced him as the champion. But as soon as Punk put those arms up as showing that he was the champion, burn it down. And then Rollins, he sold it like he was leaving after he made his entrance, only to throw down the crutches, get the huge pop, run down to the ring. He hit Punk with the briefcase no less than 7 times. And it wasn't like he just ran in and hit him with the briefcase. They had a good fight that could have gone either way. At one point, Punk even picked up Rollins like he was going to hit him with the GTS to end it. And Rollins slid out, basically just overcoming the odds of Punk just fought Gunther. GTS... Why did I write GTS? Because he didn't GTS him. He gave him the curb stomp. I apologize. But Rollins hits him with the curb stomp. Jessica Carr, referee. 1, 2, 3. We got a new champ. And we got a new story with the Vision basically running WWE with the World Heavyweight Championship. Cody Rhodes was training for some yoga, taking some time off after losing the title at WrestleMania 41, but he was coming back for SummerSlam, even though we saw him at a few different times. He had matches on pretty much every pay-per-view almost all the way, and they were getting ready to put the championship back onto Cody at SummerSlam so that Cena could find a way to turn babyface and fulfill the rest of his commitment from August until December with WWE as being some sort of a babyface, like righting his wrongs for what he had done. But at this point, Cody had stepped forward and basically said that he had got a movie role. And then after SummerSlam, he was going to be going to Australia to film Street Fighter the movie. something that he thought was going to be a good idea. He used to play Street Fighter as a kid, playing as Guile, and he'd be playing the same character, and he figured it would be a good situation for himself as well as WWE. We flip over to seeing the Lyra versus Becky match, which was also a no DQ. They kept getting turned down on ideas on what to do, in the match. We can't use the steps because, we have another no DQ match with Cena and Cody, and they're going to use it. They're going to, everything they kept throwing out there. And they finally get into the ring, and they're trying to have the best match they could have. And as Lyra said, nothing they could have done went right. One of the biggest spots that went horrible was the fact that Becky Lynch put some zip ties around Lyra Valkyrie, and at one point they delivered a move, and her hand came right out of the zip ties. And as a way to try and cover it up, even though it was on camera, she thought maybe she could fool everybody. She put her hands back into the zip ties. At this time, the zip ties actually tightened, and she couldn't get them off. And she was trying everything from using the fire extinguisher hook to try and clip it off. She ended up having to climb underneath the ring and meet somebody else who ended up cutting them off for her. But it was just one thing after another. It just kept going wrong. Lyra was crushed when the match was over. Becky was just mad. Was the best way to put it. And it was just kind of like, Lyra was like, I just need to go eat a cookie to get over this. That's basically all that had happened. Cody versus Cena happened in the main event. We didn't get a lot of John Cena in this season. In season 1, he was on almost every episode except for the one episode with the females, episode 4. We saw a few times he came into scenes the whole time. No sit-down interviews for this one. We were lucky enough to get one time of Cody Rhodes being at home. This reminded me a lot of, episode 1 of season 1 when they were talking about Cody Rhodes, trying to get him, what is he going to do on this first episode of Raw on Netflix? And he ended up just sitting in the crowd, hanging out with The Rock all night, even though that, a few months earlier, they were bitter rivals that hated each other. And, The Rock wanted to whip his ass and whip him with the belt and Mama Rhodes and blah, blah, blah. Here we are, season 2. We get all the way to the end. And we're building up this big main event of SummerSlam. They go film Cody at the yoga place. But no sit-downs with Cena, making this match seem as the biggest thing of the summer. I'll honestly tell you the truth. It's all built up to Brock Lesnar coming back at the end of SummerSlam. I forgot about it. I felt for it as they were trying to clear the back to get Brock into there. They didn't really make it seem like it was that big of a deal, but it was the cliffhanger ending of the show. They talk about, 2014, the rivalry of Brock versus Cena, but here we are, it's 12 years later. Brock hadn't been in WWE in 2 years. Why didn't he come out during the match? Why did he come out after? Was he hoping that Cena was going to win and then attack him to become the number 1 contender? Maybe that makes some sense. But, I don't know. I really like this show. I really, really do. I wish they had a way if they could, even if they did it monthly, one episode a little bit longer, almost like it was like a movie, like an hour and a half length or something like that, to keep it more fresh. When it's 5 episodes every, we'll say honestly, 4 to 5 months is what it feels like, but I'm not even 100% sure. It feels like as you're watching the show, there's a lot of stuff in WWE that doesn't get covered. I understand we don't need everything in WWE getting a documentary, but there's a lot of feuds and there's a lot of guys, and Braun Breaker was a focus, but at the end, I mean, we got to see him being told that he was going to take out Roman. Maybe because of the fact that Roman wasn't there, we heard everything in the world about Seth. And it's almost like my thoughts about the Vision now. I understand Seth is the main guy, but where we are in the story now is that Braun is the future. When does Bronson get his time? When does Logan Paul get his time after that? And then what is Austin Theory getting out of this? It doesn't really make sense. And this kind of proves my point even more, is that there's only so much spotlight. They put it all on Seth. And we really didn't, there was no sit down with Braun Breaker. We saw him being told in the back by Triple H. There was no sit down with Bronson Reed. Even after they showed that he joined the group, they never really showed him again. No tsunamis, no nothing putting him over. So I guess now that I'm getting to it, maybe I'm just getting a little tired and I'm thinking about it a little bit different. I don't know. But good stuff. I'm sure we'll talk about it tomorrow. I want to put a full review of all 5 episodes, but at least I accomplished my goal of getting each episode reviewed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I was able to do it all today. So thank you very much. Peace out, everybody. I'll see you guys down the road.